Kissy Missy was finally showed to us in Chapter 2, and despite what many initially thought, she doesn't seem to be hostile and aggressive towards the protagonist. Quite contrary, she seems to be friendly and even helpful, opening the way for the protagonist to continue on his journey out of the factory. But why did she help the protagonist instead of attacking him? Well, stick around. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and also the writer, and the editor, and also theorizer. Pretty much the entire crew behind the scene. And welcome to the video. Make sure to send me your theories and ideas on Twitter, which I could cover in the upcoming videos. This video will have spoilers. With that said, let's begin. Kissy Missy seems to be the female counterpart of Huggy Wuggy, having a pink color overall and long lashes compared to the blue color of Huggy Wuggy. Kissy Missy was created in 1985, 1 year after Huggy Wuggy, as of course, any organization seeing the massive success of a product would also see the potential to capitalize on the success by producing more variety. It's basically the same product, just with a different color tone, with some additional characteristics slapped on them. So it was a no-brainer for Playtime Co. to create a female version of Huggy Wuggy, and this is what is just common sense. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it. Toys in general are created for entertainment, appealing to customer demands, and companies producing certain toys are just corresponding with what the customers demand. In simpler words, biggest and most repeated lesson in economy, supply and demand. But again, something might not sell as well and not be as successful as initially projected. Only time will tell. A description for Kissy Missy also explains that she's the better half of Huggy Wuggy, which is also depicted in different sketches and drawings, and also that she is a beacon of Playtime Co. policies. This correlates with a poster of Kissy Missy, including some rules of the factory, showing that she is the symbol of order and obedience. Despite her description and what she is intended to stand for, it's difficult to say for sure if her breathing and walking version, which is a clear experiment, did in fact stand for those values or not. As you could tell by reading other descriptions of other dolls and toys, they are an over-exaggerated, shallow explanation of what they are, and don't seem to be correct according to our first-hand experience with these toys. For example, Huggy Wuggy is said to be a man of a few words and many warm hugs, and that whenever he says something, people should listen. We know this is uncharacteristic of actual Huggy Wuggy, who is Experiment 1170. Huggy Wuggy never speaks, unlike Puppy and Mummy Longlegs, and he for sure doesn't give any warm hugs. He gives more teeth than hugs, to be fair. He's also described by one of the scientists to be the optimum experiment, as he is the most obedient of all, and that he also has sufficient intelligence for whatever reason.
Experiment 1170, Huggy Wuggy, remains the optimal outcome due to his sufficient intelligence paired with maximum obedience.
Therefore, the NFT descriptions of these dolls do not correlate with who they actually are. This brings us to the part where Kissy Missy pulls the lever and opens the gate for the protagonist to proceed further. Many have speculated that she did it because she is designed to do so and that she is the beacon of Playtime Co. policies. And as she recognized the protagonist to be one of the employees, she instantly thought she must follow the orders of the protagonist and open the gate for him. This is a pretty good theory and very likely, but there are some details that contradict this theory. Kissy Missy, unlike Huggy Wuggy, seemed to be a little more intelligent as she showed comprehension when trying to open the gate. She didn't seem to receive any verbal cues by the protagonist to open the gate. She realizes it from his expressions. She looked at him carefully and looked back at the lever and pulled it so the gate could open. Before leaving, she even turned around, giving the protagonist a good long look, then went on her way as if she recognizes him and knows him very well, as if they had some sort of history. This fully contradicts Huggy Wuggy's character, who relentlessly chased after the protagonist just to catch him and destroy him. Huggy didn't seem to show any higher cognitive ability, trying to understand the protagonist or even explain his standpoint. He just seemed to act as a guard and on instinct, stopping anyone from entering the factory.
So, trespasser, just to make you aware, While we pride ourselves primarily on our high-quality toys and excellent childcare, we also pride ourselves on our security. For example, this facility is full of hidden motion triggers, which, once set off, will turn on the factory's emergency alarms and directly contact the authorities. And that's one of the more tame aspects of our security system. No spoilers.
The biggest problem with the theory, however, that Kissy Missy is obedient and that she's designed to uphold the policies, is that Huggy Wuggy was set to be the optimum experiment as he showed maximum obedience. Therefore, why would he attack the protagonist if he was a recognizable employee? Wouldn't Huggy just obey him and help him go through the obstacles? This contradiction proves that just because the dolls were described to be a certain way doesn't mean that they truly are that way. If Huggy is said to speak, who doesn't at all, if he's said to hug people, who instead attacks people, what stops other characters like Kissy Missy to contradict their descriptions? What stops her from breaking the rules that her description said that she's obedient? And if she was actually a beacon of Playtime Co.'s policies, wouldn't she stop the protagonist from entering deeper into the factory? As clearly some of the rules of the factory is to never stay after 8 p.m. for unauthorized people, something that Huggy Wuggy actually seemed to obey and stop people from doing so, and to also not enter the innovation wing. The protagonist clearly enters places that he's not supposed to. Without any windows present, it's difficult to estimate the time it is that the protagonist is in the factory, but it seems that he's there for quite some time. Let's try to analyze Kissy Missy's expressions and understand what was actually going on in her mind while observing the protagonist and deciding to open the gate. First thing she does is to quickly tilt her head to one side, looking at the protagonist. Tilting head could have variety of definitions, but two major ones are showing interest and curiosity. She then looks at the liver and back at the protagonist, then back at the liver, and proceeds to put her right hand on the liver. At first, her hand slips and fails to summon any strength to pull it. Second time is the charm, however, as she manages to pull it. She looks back at the protagonist and turns her body to leave, but once more, she turns her head, observes the protagonist with a longing look, then continues to walk back and leave. Tilting her head at first could show curiosity of her trying to figure out what the protagonist wants. It could also mean she's showing interest to the protagonist, whether she knows him from before or it's the first time she's seeing a person for a long time. Putting two and two together, she understands the protagonist wants the gate to open, which she confirms by looking at the protagonist once more before doing so. Her weak and flexible arm suggests that she doesn't have any bones in them. However, she manages to grip the lever, suggesting that she has joints in her fingers. What is the most perplexing part of this interaction is that she lingers before leaving and gives the protagonist a good look. A last lingering look could also show interest, but an interest to someone or something that is well known. Therefore, Kissy Missy shows interest beyond a general interest to any typical person. She gives the protagonist a last long look, depicting she's personally interested in him. Something that hasn't been talked about enough is also why she leaves rather than just staying and getting acquainted with the protagonist. If she's interested in him, or even according to the other theory, obeys the demands of Playtime Co. When generally someone leaves and doesn't want to stay close to someone, it is interpreted as being scared, resentful, or uninterested in them. We know by now that Kissy Missy is in fact interested or at least intrigued by the protagonist, but maybe she knows what the protagonist is capable of, leading to her making the decision to stay away from him. Maybe the protagonist did in fact experiment on children and adults, transforming them into abominations and monsters, who they would later on enslave and conduct more experiments on. Maybe Kissy Missy had a kind and pure personality. Maybe she was a child who formed a bond with the protagonist back when he was carrying out an experiment on her. After all, the child was an orphan and sought the approval and love of any adult who showed her slightest amount of attention and care. Maybe the test subject who eventually became Kissy Missy saw the protagonist as a father figure. Even though the protagonist betrayed her trust and committed such atrocity of conducting an experiment on her, the consciousness of this test subject, now being Kissy Missy, showed kindness to him and opened the way for him. I know this sounds a little far-fetched and there's not much evidence backing this little story, but only imagine if that is the case, it would explain Kissy Missy's reaction perfectly. Kissy Missy comes to the protagonist, but instead of quickly opening the gate, gives him a good look, recognizing him and tilting her head to what he has succumbed to and how desperate he is to escape, or how the tables have turned. She confirms with him it is the gate that he wants to be opened. Despite being resentful, she helps him, but not before giving him a long last look, remembering all the past memories and their history. However, she doesn't stay. She leaves quickly as she doesn't want to stay with him, as she's resentful and seems to have moved on from her horrible past experiences. She might be even confused to why the protagonist doesn't seem to remember what happened, as if he actually would, he would never step inside the factory swarmed with angry hostile dolls that he participated in experimenting on them. Anyway, that's my interpretation why Kissy Missy helped the protagonist instead of killing him. I'd love to hear your theories and ideas, so make sure to leave them in the comment section or on my Twitter by tagging me or sending me a message, as it would be much easier to see them there. It's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one.